Gerbil. Test 1, 2, 3. Gerbil, gerbil. Gerbil's the word.
Guys.
What? You ready?
Grow up.
Welcome to Emotion Chips, where we talk about the real reason everything happens for a reason. I'm your host, Carol, along with my clubby co-host, Mallory Redmond.
What?
It's real. That's a real word. Clubby.
I know clubby's a word, but what is
friendly. It means friendly.
I actually did not know that.
Yep. Clubby. My clubby co-host, Mallory Redmond. Mal, welcome to the program. It's been a while. We need to address this. This is a real issue. It's been a while.
Let's just call a spade a spade.
Let's call a spade a spade. Gelman has been out. Our producer has been out traveling.
Everybody but Mal has been out traveling. That is the actual truth.
That is true.
Everybody on this team has been traveling except for me. I've been holding down the fort.
Yes. Good job, Mal.
Well, not really. We haven't been putting out podcasts. If I was holding down the fort well, I would have just put some out by myself.
It takes a village.
Solo.
It takes a village. Give our listening audience a quick update about yourself.
Oh. I don't know. Everything's normal.
Okay, well, good.
Everything's great.
This is my first full day back in town after being out of town the majority of last month. It feels really good to be back in town.
It's great. Welcome back.
Yes, lots of festivities here recently.
What do you mean?
Just celebrating Easter, so on and so forth, what have you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Easter is a very interesting holiday in our culture.
I agree.
Anything else to say about that? I'm glad you agree.
Well, what do you mean?
I mean what I mean. It's interesting.
But why do you say that? What does interesting mean?
I mean, just the amount of money that is spent on candy and chocolate.
My gosh. Okay. How do I say this? Do you know what I saw this Easter that I have not seen before? You know how there's like chocolate bunnies?
Yeah. Which
my parents would always get us these giant chocolate bunnies. And I don't know if my siblings ate them. I never even opened them.
Okay.
Chocolate crosses.
Chocolate crosses.
Yeah, to eat.
Oh.
Well, I'm assuming you're supposed to eat them. They're made of chocolate.
I imagine you saw this in a Christian circle.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
That's very interesting. I think Jesus would be appalled at how we have made him a product to be consumed.
I certainly don't think Jesus would be thrilled that the cross was turned into a candy.
A chocolate. Obviously, I mean that in more ways than just eating a chocolate cross. I said it today in a meeting we were in earlier, just about Jesus being a product to be consumed. I don't even know, to what extent he would like his name being used the way it is, how much is done in the name of Jesus when he kind of gave us the model by showing us what to do more than talking about it. And it actually, in history, prior to Rome getting a hold of Christianity, it was actually identified as the movement with no name, which is beautiful. And I absolutely love that because it was more about what was being done versus what was being said.
Mm-hmm.
And we sure do live in a noisy society where someone said, sitting in a boardroom somewhere, you know what we could probably make a lot of money off of? Chocolate crosses.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
And somebody goes, brilliant.
Brilliant, yeah.
Let's make a chocolate cross.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm, for sure. I agree.
I happened to be traveling with and got to spend some time with a friend who is a master somm, and he was handling the wine and cocktails, which were amazing.
You had wine and cocktails on Easter Sunday?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
I know.
What are we going to do with you?
I know. I've lost my title.
Phew.
But yes, they were outstanding.
Yeah,
some people overdid it. Some people overdid it.
Well, sure.
One of the cocktails that was absolutely fascinating. My friend is a friend who is aware of what's going on in the world, and so he does some cool things where he looks for people in third world countries or in troubled areas of the world and tries to buy product from them. So, for example, we had a rum from Haiti that was organically harvest or like raw harvested sugar cane, and it was like really there was flavors of like grass and lemon in it. It's like a rum I've never had before, and it was out of Haiti, and just supporting someone there that has a rough go at it in light of what's going on in that country. And it was just really earthy, but in such a good way. Like it smelled almost like a bouquet of flowers. And so he muddled that with some simple syrup, muddled blueberries and simple syrup, and it was phenomenal.
Nice.
Yes, absolutely. Like, a good cocktail is balanced and it is sophisticated, but it is not overpowering in any way, shape, or form.
100%.
It has a lot of poise to it. And so he made it and he gave it to someone who had, in fairness to them, just had some nuts. They were eating like nuts off the table, and they tasted it and they're like, it needs something. And I'm like, let me try. And so he gave me one, and I was just like blown away at how simple it was, but complex. Like the real complex things in life, like, are made super simple for people to enjoy right where they are. And it was absolutely phenomenal.
I had a really great cocktail the other week. It was a twist on, so I love a dirty martini.
Yeah.
Like that's one of my go-tos.
Yeah.
And this one used green bell pepper.
I've heard of this.
Oh my gosh. It was down in Cincinnati at Soto.
Oh, shout out to Soto.
Shout out to Soto. I've never been disappointed there. But it was amazing. Like fresh, like tasting,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so simple.
Yeah.
Like it was not anything too complex, and it was amazing.
Yeah. What's interesting about restaurants like Soto is they pay attention to the details.
Oh yeah.
And if you're aware, if you're awake, like you get to experience those. And there's something about like people that know and love and enjoy life that wherever they go, like they're paying attention and like their eyes are open for the details.
Yeah.
And that's how you really build a following, is by doing the things that a lot of people won't see, but the people that can see,
Right.
And it's just like, it's such a fun thing to interact and do life with people that have a very particular level of conscientiousness.
For sure.
Now, that being said, obviously you can overdo it. And there were some people in our party that overdid it and had too much. But in general, you can't stay away from something just because there is the potential to overdo it. Does that make sense?
There's the potential to overdo anything, even overdoing not doing anything.
For sure. Yeah.
So,
very good point.
Thank
Can
you.
somebody write that down?
Write that down. Quote me on
that. You
that.
can overdo not doing anything. Yeah, I think it's true. I was telling the story of John Mayer on his last album. We saw a little ad that, he's coming out with a new album here this month in April.
Okay.
And I was talking about going to see him on his last album, which was in 19. And he wrote a song, Helpless. And I was telling some of the guests that the story that I have heard is that he had way too much to drink at a party at Drake's house.
Okay.
And it got to a point where he was so out of control that, and I guess this can be verified, but he was so out of control that Drake had to walk him out and tell him it was best that he just went home. And so I can probably look this up, actually. He went and wrote this song, Helpless, and the lyrics make me think about what you just said about the potential to overdo anything. This is his song, Helpless. Here are the lyrics.
Okay.
The same drink that gets me out the door is the same drink that puts me on the floor. And the new thing I want to try some more is the same mistake I used to make before. The same brain that brings me ecstasy is the same pain that gets the best of me. Pretty interesting. And the idea behind it is, he went home and wrote that the next morning, that song based on his experience, finding the balance in these things, and then has not touched a drink since.
Oh, really? That did it for him?
He just decided that because he could not execute the appropriate amount of discipline, that he was not going to drink again, and sticks to it that he is not drinking anymore because that same drink that got him out the door is the one that left him on the floor.
Yeah, very mature of him.
Which, when I was first traveling, I had a chance to tune into. Here's what that makes me think of.
Okay. We're all wondering.
Yes, thank you. It's just the Grammys, right? Did you get a chance to watch?
Yes.
And so a lot of the talk that came out of the Grammys, and you and I have conversations about this sometimes, with Cardi B, and is it WAP?
Gelman?
W-A-P. I think they call the song WAP, which you'll have to Google this, or else I would have to make it explicit when I tell you what WAP stands for. But they did this performance. Yeah, now you got it. You're there now. Yeah. And Google it, ladies and gentlemen.
Or don't.
Or don't Google it. Maybe you don't. Yeah, probably shouldn't do that. But that was the talk the next day about her freedom. And
so that you're saying she performed the song. Is this the one that on a gigantic bed?
Yes.
Yes. I did.
And so there was, you can go and look at like Vanity Fair or all kinds of articles out there talking about, it was a porn movie and all of the moves that she was making with what she was wearing and how, so on and so forth. And I guess, when it comes to what you said about you can overdo anything, one of the things that I really wonder about is what does that look like specifically in that situation on the Grammys for a woman to have freedom of expression and to use her body any way she wants, but yet also not further the narrative at the same time that a woman's body is a product to be consumed. Like we're in the same way John Mayer said, hey, this is a product that gets me out the door, but yet it's the same thing that can cause a lot of trouble. Like where do we find, especially when talking about a woman and her role in society or like how she interacts with society, like where's the line there?
It's a really good question.
Go on.
Gelman, do you have an answer?
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean. And I wrestle with it all the time as a woman and as a mom who's raising 2 daughters. I wrestle with it all the time.
Yeah.
I remember, not this past Super Bowl, but the one before, who performed. It was 2 women, Jennifer Lopez.
Yep.
Shakira.
Good job, Gelman.
I knew we had here for something.
That's why he's here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. And I watched their halftime performance and
shaking their booties.
Mm-hmm. It was just a very they were in their bodies.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was a very like sexualized performance. And truth be told, I felt like really uncomfortable. Like I thought if my kids were older, like I don't know how I'd feel about them seeing this.
Yeah.
And then I went on my social media and a lot of the people that I follow were really celebrating those women and just saying like, it's really not fair that like if a man had done a performance like that, they're like thrusting and have their shirt off and everything. Like we don't say anything about it, but women are dancing in this way and it's like this whole big thing. And so these people that I really respect and follow, were just like celebrating those 2 women and like, how they just sort of like took ownership of like who they are and the abilities that they have and all of that. And so that broadened my perspective.
Sure.
Whereas like, I feel like I was raised not necessarily in a home, but more in a culture that like in a Christian culture that it's like, nope, you got to be covered,
sure.
And you can't dance in this sort of way and you can't, do this sort of thing. And yet, like, why?
Sure.
Like, why? And so it's something that I wrestle with it all the time because I want my girls and I want to feel confident in my body and I want to be able to like dance and dress in a way that like it empowers me. And
hold on a second. Let's dive into that for 1 second. When you say you want to dress in a way that empowers you, what does that mean exactly in your mind?
Feel good. Feel confident.
And that doesn't matter, like weight or
right.
Yeah.
No, not at all. But I think especially growing up, like I went to public school, like university, high school, all of that. I was always in public school. But I grew up in the church. And so I just always had this understanding of like, well, you put your arms down next to your, down your legs and your shorts can't go above that. Sure. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And yet I think I want my girls to, I guess just freedom. I guess the word would be freedom.
Sure.
And there is this whole piece about like, well, we belong to one another. And so the narrative that's in my head is like, don't cause your brother to stumble.
Sure.
Like don't cause the boys around you to stumble.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just a lot where I get caught up in like, what's my responsibility and why do I have to be responsible for what they think or do because of how I'm dressing? I mean, it's just it gets me into a whole web.
Well, that's definitely there. And I mean, we can broaden this to where it's not just about the female body and sexuality, right? To even go into the role of alcohol, society has established that a blood alcohol level of this much means you're a detriment to society, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. I think when it comes to thinking through this, more than anything for my own daughter, I guess my question would be that I have to wrestle with is when it comes to helping her find the balance between feel good about yourself and how God made you, but then also how, because of this society and in general, the female body being known as or used through marketing primarily as a way to lure people in and get views and sell products, right? How do you help them understand that based on how they carry themselves, they could attract the wrong kind of person to them? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And that's the difference between like the alcohol. We were just having this actually on the plane ride back last night, having this conversation about like the legalization of marijuana, right? Like I think it should be legalized, but then there's also some sort of measures that have to be put in place because I should have, the freedom to do with my body, I think, what I want to do with it, right? Same thing with the vaccine talk right now. But at some point in time, when you live in a society where there are other people and you overdoing it can take innocent people's lives, there's got to be, I guess I'm saying that anytime you belong to a community of one person or more, you've got to understand that you lose some of your rights.
Sure. And we've even bumped into that with some of our organizations of, like we would have a gathering where we would have wine or beer available.
Yeah.
And then we started getting people into our organizations who struggle with alcoholism. And It's like, why are we putting them in the position of being tempted because we want to have a drink at this meeting or this gathering? I mean, it's a real question. And I don't know that there's a blanket answer for it. I think a lot of it is situational, but, Jennifer Lopez at that Super Bowl thing, whatever halftime show. The woman's like 50 years old. Like it's pretty amazing the things that she can do with her body. It is very athletic what she's doing. And I know like your daughter loves dancing.
Sure, yeah.
And so I think there's something to be said. Obviously I don't know everything about Jennifer Lopez's intentions, but like your daughter, it's very innocent, like she just loves to dance around her house and dance with her friends and all of that. And like, I hate for that to be taken from her.
Yeah.
Because of what people around her would do with it.
Yeah, I agree. I also think it's interesting to think about the differences between Shakira and Jennifer Lopez, who primarily were like Latin dancing and of course shaking their booty, compared to Cardi B, who was simulating sex on stage for, millions of people to see. And I guess the question is just, just because everything in its intended context is good, especially in this idea of a woman's body and her freedom to choose, at what point in time does that freedom become a detriment to someone else? And if it's a detriment to someone else, then we're kind of violating our own principles of looking out for other people and preferring the other person. I don't have an answer. it's just, it's interesting. I definitely think that a woman has, ultimately the right to choose over her own body and what happens with her body. Like, she needs to be accountable for, like, that's her right. That's her choice. The question is, like, if you look up the statistics for like child abduction and the sex trade industry and like pornography, the porn industry, if you talk to anybody that's been in the industry, a lot of these women are being hurt, like severely hurt and drugged to get into a state where they can do what they're doing. And someone would say, well, it's their right. They're getting paid, however much of amount of money to do this. It's their right to do that. If they want to, do this, then they can do it. But the problem with that is there are a lot of unhealthy men and women, but especially men, watching that, and then that becomes their fantasy to do and replicate what they see. And a lot of them don't have any other skills or abilities or relational abilities specifically in life. And so they have to do that to someone against their will, even if it starts off as mutual and then it goes somewhere from there. I mean, it's something like 2 out of every 5 women will have something sexually forced on them in their life against their will. It's a real statistic. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like 40% of women will have, it's the technical statement is an act of sexual aggression against them. And so I guess some of where my mind starts to go is in this idea of community and society. Yes, a woman's body is her body, but also though Cardi B is getting paid millions of dollars for her provocative lyrics and like bodily gestures, there is a ripple effect there that affects people that are not strong enough or mature enough to defend themselves.
Right. Well, but what is that person's responsibility?
Who is that?
The person that's not strong enough.
Well, I mean,
you can't just say, well, they're not strong enough, so end of sentence.
Well, here's an example. Years ago, Amy and I were at the pool in our apartment complex, and he was probably 3 years old, but he was probably 4 or 5 years old. A young man, really super young, I don't even know that he was old enough to know what he was doing. We hear a little girl like screaming, and we look back, and this young man has a girl that is older than him knocked down on the ground in the kiddie pool and is humping her from behind, and she's trying to get away from him. And it's just like, I mean, that's exactly what he was doing. Like, he was imitating something that he saw. Mm. And so I guess like what I'm referring to, obviously it's not every case, but there are a lot of cases of young women that when I say like they're not strong enough to defend themselves, either they're innocent and have an encounter at school, or maybe because of the dysfunction in their home, they get themselves into situations where then someone forces themselves on them. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not telling you I have answers. I'm just wondering where the balance is when it comes to somebody, when I think of responsibility, if you have millions of viewers following you and you're really trying to empower other women, like, are you doing that? When it appears as if you're carrying yourself in a way that would say the female body is a product to be consumed and purely enjoyed.
Right. I agree. And I do think that there is a difference between Cardi B's performance and that halftime show.
Sure.
What I was asking that I think maybe I didn't ask very well, but if it's a community, if we belong to one another and it's a community thing where like I have to be aware of my behavior and what I'm doing because I am a part of a greater community, the person that's looking at my body is also responsible for themselves. For sure. And for sure. I think so often, at least in a lot of the conversations or like the circles that I was raised in, it's like, you're the girl, you gotta change yourself. And it's like, I completely agree that I need to make modifications in order to belong with integrity to a healthy community. But everybody has to.
Sure.
And I think we just oftentimes we give a pass to people who are quote unquote like, well, they just like, this is their struggle. And so period.
For sure. Yeah. I definitely think, especially in faith-based circles, it has been a lot easier to make the woman's body the problem. But if you go all the way back to the Garden of Eden, if people could read their Bibles versus listening to what everybody says about the Bible, we would be in better shape. In the book of Timothy, it says that Eve was deceived and Adam sinned, meaning Eve wasn't even around when Adam got the instructions not to eat that fruit. And so he is the one that disobeyed. Eve was deceived, just tricked. And I think there's a history of, the world being ran by men and women being in using this case as an example, the problem, right? It's the woman's body that's the problem. Well, I don't think it's the woman's body that's the problem at all. And I think a woman should be able to dress in a way that she feels empowered and feels confident in herself. The question is, with me having a daughter, is how do I help her find the balance between, wear that outfit that makes you feel good about yourself, but also be aware that there is a large population of men out there that might be more interested in you physically than who you are at your core, and dress in a way that would not make your job more difficult in discovering who the real men are versus who are the people just chasing pleasure.
So what does that mean? I mean, your daughter is entering an age where like this is very real.
Sure.
So I know you don't have it all figured out and you don't have all of the answers, but I'm curious if you want to share, like, practically speaking, what is it like?
Yeah. I'll answer that. She watches TikTok a lot, and that's something that we try to monitor because she is already aware that it is the way she moves her body, and particularly how she can like move her hips, that gets like views on TikTok. And so there are all these young teenage girls on TikTok that get a lot of views based on, what they're wearing and how well they can move their body. And obviously God made our bodies in a way that can move, and they're to be enjoyed. Right. But she has already, put two and two together that she needs to learn these different dances. And the dances that get more views tend to be the seductive dances where they're moving their body in a way that is inviting.
Oh my gosh, what an incredibly difficult time to be raising children.
Yeah, for sure.
With all of these apps. So do you like look at what she puts out there?
Here and there. I mean, I'm not going to. She knows that if she puts something out there that is questionable, her mom or I is going to will eventually find it. You know what? But here, this is so important. I don't go out of my way to look at my kids' phones, and people would say, "Well, you're crazy." And I understand that, but I've been watching this game for 30 years now, where there is a greater sin than your kid putting out a TikTok video. And you know what that is? You not being smart enough as a parent to earn their trust. And so you pick on one or two videos or the way they move their body first and foremost, you're running to the wrong fire. Mm-hmm. The right fire is whether or not they trust you. And I rather my daughter put out a video or two and come back on the backside and say, hey, here's why this might not work for you long term. I think you should take it down. And I say that because I'll never forget when I was at a dinner with my family, and one of our friends joined us because his family was out of town. And my children are the same age as his children. And my children accidentally revealed his daughter's secret TikTok account that she had hid from her parents because she, for her own reason, determined that they were not trustworthy with the content that she wanted to produce. And so, it was not good. They were enraged. And it's like, people give me a hard time for me allowing my kids to explore like what we call bad words, Well, first of all, there is no such thing as a bad word. A bad word is something that a culture determines is bad or inappropriate. The validity in the idea of not using bad words is self-control. The hypocrisy in that idea is that we will pick on the things that we think make our family look bad or our kids look bad, while that fat belly that's going to cause heart disease or cancer is left untouched. And so it's hypocritical. Mm-hmm. That being said, I get given a hard time because I give my children freedom to choose for themselves what they think is best for themselves, while I come in and give them support. And I might let them learn that the word ass or shit, can be used at certain times in a moment of frustration, but that ultimately self-control is what needs to be taught there. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, I earn their trust. I can't tell you how many issues our children bring to us because they can trust us. And there are people that are listening to this podcast now that know exactly what I'm talking about, that were raised in Christian circles where in the name of morality and being close to God and being holy, they were controlled and taught that the only thing that really exists is what other people see. It was never said that way, but that was the land of the law. We don't let people see certain things. And what ends up happening, young people take these things on their own, right? They take them on their own, and they're not ready for it. But they do it alone, and being alone drives them to somebody else, which drives them to somebody else. And they wake up one day and their life is on the line, or they have an addiction, or they're caught up in some serious sexual stuff because they never had anyone they could trust. And so, to the parent that is out there that is worried about your kid watching a rated R movie or saying the wrong word, you are running to the wrong fire. And you are delaying your pain that is coming 10 years from now or 5 years from now because your child can't trust you. Mm-hmm. That's the real problem.
Mm-hmm. So true. I can't completely identify with the parenting conversation, mostly because my kids are still so young. But it's just I think we can all relate to as long as everybody sees that we have it all together, sure, then that's totally fine. Gelman. And so one way that I am actively trying to prepare for when my kids are more your age, sure, of kids, yeah, is, I think I've talked about this before, but my kids don't look like they came out of a catalog.
Sure.
And I wish, if I had it my way, they would look like they're walking out of a J. Crew catalog every morning. And I purposefully, I let Evie, she's going to be 3 on Monday, I let her pick out what she's going to wear. And the girl looks like, do you remember Punky Brewster?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I loved Punky Brewster. Nothing matches. Everything, it's just clashing. It's just, it looks, and their hair, she won't let me put her hair up. She looks feral sometimes.
Sure.
And I'm like, I really want to, not only for her, but for me to create a sense of empowerment and independence, and you choose, sure, be who you were created to be. And we're going to come up against some things that are going to create difficult conversations, like the way that you want to move your body or whatever, right, however, whatever comes up for us. But I'm trying, for those of you who are in my stage of life with very young children, that's something that I'm not doing it perfectly, but it's something that I'm really trying to do in order to prepare for when they're teenagers, sure, and we're actually facing some real stuff.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing, even though your children, your daughters are as young as they are, you can start them now with empowering them to make decisions for themselves.
Yeah. And
it really does come down to helping them live from the inside out versus the outside in. And the danger for me, especially with young women, like my daughter being 10, it's very easy for her to believe the message that her value comes back to an outside in approach versus an inside out.
For sure.
And so, I think we get the argument wrong. Yes, a young woman needs to be mindful of her body's interaction with community, right? And how she carries herself and dresses and dances and all of those things. But at the same time, like there's a deeper thing going on here. It's your value is really from the inside out, not the outside in. And as parents, especially faith-oriented people, when we let the story become about right decisions and wrong decisions primarily, right, we condition them to live from the outside in. And nobody that lives from the outside in is ever happy. Right. You have to learn to live from the inside out and start off with, this is who I am at my core. I honestly believe that there is precedence in Scripture for God honoring people starting where they are versus trying to promote some sort of picture of who they are when they're not. Because you can start anywhere and work toward gradual change, but you really can't start from a fictitious place that's nothing more than a projection. You're not going to alter like a projection of who you are and feel better. You have to get to your core and be okay with you and learn to value yourself and go from there and work from there. And so I hear you, and I know that, you know, Cardi B's message is like, hey, I'm very proud of this body. It's my body. I can do what I want. And when I have this many followers that are willing to pay for my concerts and for my music, then that's their free choice not to follow me. But the problem is what a lot of us have not woke up to is we live in a world where what sells tends to be detrimental to a community at large, to include the food that we eat. And so, yes, there is the truth that we are our own person, and ultimately we can only be responsible for ourselves. And then there's also the truth that, like, I have responsibility in light of living around and with other people to carry myself in a way that is mindful, at least mindful of what's best for them. But then ultimately, at the end of the day, it really comes back to thinking the right way about ourselves and having a long-term picture in mind when it comes to how do I carry myself. And so I would apply that in my situation, you know, getting back to the question you asked, with my 10-year-old, like, I want her to feel good about herself. I want her to be able to, like, feel the thrill of putting a dance or coordinated dance together and executing it. But at the same time, I have to help her understand that what always feels good up front and initially isn't always going to feel good or deliver the results that overall will make you satisfied in your life. Like, you want to draw a partner to you that is going to cherish you from the inside out and enjoy your body and what the two of you can do together physically. Mm-hmm. That's got to be more than just wishful thinking. That has to saturate our thoughts about how we carry ourselves and walk this life out in person is what I think.
Okay, so how do you know that Cardi B is not living from the inside out?
Well,
that's a serious question.
It's for sure. Meant to be. I would say, listening to some of her lyrics, which, if words come from the heart, I would say lyrics could be a good indicator that maybe the reward system in this country has overtaken some of her personal values or personal beliefs because she gets paid really, really well for being provocative, like most people do. But I don't know that for sure. And
I mean, wouldn't you say a lot of people in, like, Christian music put together the right words, but sure, are not living from the inside out?
No doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt about it.
I'm curious, like, especially in relationship, you know, when we're in relationship with other people and wanting to love one another. Do you think somebody can love another person from the inside out if that person does not live from the inside out?
I think it's very difficult to do that, but I think you probably can.
So what are some indicators that somebody is living from the inside out? Because you can do, just like in Christian music or whatever, if your family has the catalog thing, they look like they have it all together, like, how do you know? And that's not meant, I'm not asking that in order to, like, well, let's judge all of the people that we see on the street. No, you're not actually. But I'm just curious, like, how do I know even that I'm living from the inside out?
I don't think anyone is ever completely living from the inside out, because it's the outside, it's our skin and our senses that interact with the world around us all of the time. And any of us can make a mistake and kind of become outside driven or make a decision once or twice or whatever that was based on a sense that was stimulated. You're walking through the store, you see something that you saw on TV and you buy it even though you did not need it. That's living from the inside out or from the outside in. I would say in general, like being content with yourself is a big deal. Like not, doing what you're doing for the right reasons, that you're working out for the right reasons because you have a belief in health and wellness, not because you want your butt to look a certain way or because you're afraid you'll be left if you have too much cellulite. And so a sense of self-worth that manifests as self-confidence for the right reasons, I think is an indicator of living from the inside out. I think, practically speaking, other things that you could look for is less ego in a person. Like, I like being around people that don't have to be right and they're okay when they're wrong. Mm-hmm. That they don't attach their person to their position. We were talking around the table a couple days ago, and the idea of taste came up. And what is good taste? And is taste something that could be certified and is objective, or is it relative? And we used the example of wine at first, and then we started talking about pizza. Like, there are a lot of people that would take a gourmet pizza and push it to the side and say, I just want, Domino's or Papa John's. And can you tell them that they don't have good taste? And so it got into a really heated debate where it was kind of getting personal between some people because there was really differing opinions on this.
Because there was ego?
There was ego involved. Exactly. And it's just like at the very highest levels, people operate where they can get like heated and passionate, but yet they can walk out of the room friends because they don't have ego involved and they don't have as much or they have very little ego driving their sense of self-worth. They're passionate about their products or their position that they've taken on a certain thing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they can walk out of the room and be friends. Like, politics in America are the way they are now. We're so divided because it seems to be that we've developed a consumeristic culture over the last 30 years that has made us, our roots seem to be not so deep relationally. And so because of the breakdown of the family, a lot of children don't have someone around saying, here's where your worth and value comes from. It's not in your ability to get followers or in your ability to play an instrument or a sport really well. Like, you are very valuable at your core and you're loved unconditionally. When someone is loved unconditionally and has a strong sense of self-worth, they can get their ego out of the picture and be a better part of a thriving team because they're not worried about speaking up with the fear of being rejected because they've detached their position from the person. The people that make life difficult are insecure people.
Yeah, 100%. And that triggered a thought that I don't know that I can articulate very well, but I'm hoping I can spit something out and you can do something with it.
Sure.
When you talk about taste, we were just having this conversation at a dinner a couple weeks ago about sight. Like, who says blue's blue?
Sure.
My husband's colorblind. And so we had this whole conversation at a dinner about like, well, what makes green green and all of whatever. It can start like screwing with your mind if you think about it too much. Sure. But I think about that in terms of like being in community. Like, if I'm going to live with integrity and honor my neighbor and honor myself, like I have taken some heat just for like being like loud, being a loud, or someone who like is comfortable speaking in public. Or so it's not about the way that I dress necessarily or the way that I dance, but it's just like a gift I have.
Sure.
That can like set somebody off in whatever way, whatever that looks like or means, just like Cardi B can set somebody off in a certain way. Yeah. And so I think that makes it really hard is that where do you draw the line of like, this is just who I am?
Sure.
Because it's not just about like over sexualized dancing.
Sure.
Or showing your midriff.
Sure.
Like, it can be a number of things when you're in a diverse community where whatever can make a person think or dream or whatever, fantasize.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, unfortunately, I think what drives this conversation is the felt need to have a place for everything, where there has to be an answer to everything.
Sure.
And I think what a lot of us have yet to come to grips with is, as long as human beings are involved, there will be mistakes, and it will be messy.
For sure.
So I think it comes back to, what should we be talking about? What is the right questions that we should help our children ask when they see these things, right? Because at the end of the day, everything has, and bringing it kind of home to close this episode with an emotionship being the energetic or emotional relationship to all of the relationships in our life. Cardi B, when that dance routine, whoever it was choreographed by, had an intended result, right? Mm-hmm. And so every ounce of energy that I use, whether I'm intentional or unintentional, whether I am aware or unaware, has a consequence. And so it just comes back to when, God gave us the ability to move our bodies in a way that draws people to us, to get attention and draws people to us. And I would want to just encourage my daughter to understand when she is carrying herself in a way that she is drawing attention to herself, and then for her to ask the question, why?
Yeah.
And if the question is, why am I doing this? And the answer is, I've had a hard week and I feel like reinforcing my value because maybe I flunked an exam and I feel bad, and damn it, I want to know that I'm desired or that I can contribute. That's what I think the opportunity is to get to the why in all of these things, and just understand that energetically speaking, we don't live, life doesn't happen in a vacuum. Like, there are consequences to everything. And so when I used to coach back in South Carolina soccer, I would take a team of 10-year-old girls, which I loved coaching women because they listened a lot better. And it wasn't all about like power as much as it was like understanding and strategy. And I would keep them for a couple of years as their coach. And they were like my daughters to me. And they started coming of age as they went from 10 to like 14 years old, where they understood that they could use their body to get attention. And so they would wear like you probably know the name of these, the little like cheerleading shorts. And they would like roll them 15 times.
Yeah. I was just remember when I was wearing those? They're like cloth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a pair or two.
There you go.
From years ago. Yes.
And so they would wear these. I want to say it starts with an S, but they would wear these.
I didn't know there was a name for them.
Yeah. Well, at least when I was coaching, there was. And they roll them. And so you're seeing all of the legs, all of their legs, in which soccer girls typically had attractive legs because they run so much. And they're hiking them up to where like you can see a lot of their crotch, you know what I mean? Because of them hiking them up. And then they would take their t-shirt and tie it right under their sports bra, right? So you can see a lot of their stomach. And I don't think the question is this right or wrong, right? Because I don't know that takes us anywhere. It's just like, why are you doing that? And I think the answer is going to be to feel good about myself. And then if you take it a little further than that, like the guys like to look at that, and the guys gave them attention for that.
Why couldn't the answer be like, I'm sweating and it's hot and guys play soccer with their shirts off?
I'm sure it could be. Yeah, I'm sure it could be. I would just say from my experience and like overhearing them talking about the guys that they liked and, what worked and what didn't work, they were aware that they could carry themselves in a way that would get attention. And I agree with you that it's definitely not like, oh, this is a female problem by any means. Like a man is responsible for his eyes and his thoughts and his words. But it just comes down to like what I think I want to do with my daughter is just help her create a level of awareness as to why she is doing what she's doing, And if that why is right, more than likely she's going to be fine with not a ton of problems. If the why is inconsistent with how she wants to live her life long term, then it's probably going to invite occasions that she might not be happy with, or things that she doesn't really want to deal with.
Mm-hmm. I think that's gold. I think that is such gold for boys too.
Sure.
For all of us, I think that is a great question.
Because obviously guys get put in, the same situation where they are living from the outside in just an entirely different way. And honestly, truth be told, long term probably are more detrimental to society as a man when you live from the outside in versus a woman that lives from the outside in. I think, that's my thoughts. I don't want to. I'll open up a whole can of worms about like
Maybe that's the next episode.
Yeah, the man box.
Oh. Let's do the man box in the next episode.
We're talking about the man box.
We're very curious what's in the man box.
Oh, yeah. Episode 57 of Emotion Check, where we talk about